Well, welcome everybody. Today's webinar is 7 ideas to revolutionize your selling. How you could change your selling today by applying principles of urgency and what pure selling can do, what you can do after today's webinar, how you could change. We're going to take a journey into the buyer and the seller's mindset. So I ask you this question. Are you ready? Now, to change, we often need to enter and look at the buyer's approach and overcome self-limiting assumptions. What you see here is a picture of a classic overcoming of self-limiting assumptions. This is Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile when it was believed you couldn't do it. Do you know that in the year afterwards, in the year after he broke the 4-minute mile, somebody beat his time because it was believed it was possible? So are you ready to challenge some of your assumptions as we look at 7 revolutionary ideas? All right, a major prospect vanishes. They go to radio silence. That's a problem we face. Or maybe when you're talking to somebody and they're looking for a fire sale, they're not valuing what we do. What could pure selling accomplish here? Pure selling. Idea number 1, better qualification of leads through PIKs. Now, PIK means payment in kind. It's what the prospect does to show that he or she is serious. So there are 2 kinds of sales calls, safe and serious, safe and serious. In a safe sales call, you're never going to get a stick of business. The prospect is in that interaction for a different reason than you, probably just to do a price check. In a serious sales call, the prospect has an urgent need and they're willing to share it with you. How do you tell the difference between safe and serious? If it's not a one-call close, payment in kind. It's what the prospect does. So selling should not be a spectator sport, but an engagement, a contact sport. Here are some of the things a buyer could do. Introduce us to a C-suite executive, check a reference, fill out a credit application, visit our plant or invite us to visit theirs. It's through qualification that we get better opportunity in the pipeline and we close more. So what are the PIKs that you request in your selling process? A PIK decision rule. Go for the strongest PIK to which you have earned the right. So how do you earn the right to a strong PIK? Well, 2 common approaches or thought processes. You go for the pain or you go for the vision. Now, the pain is more popular. What are your pain points? What are your challenges? What are your problems? This is the most common selling approach, and it's the easiest when the prospect cooperates, when the prospect is already in conversation or you're in relationship. Now, the vision is important when the prospect says, I'm good, or even ignores you. And this is typically 80 to 95% of the time is the vision. You need the vision to break through. Idea number 2, overcoming the tyranny of the or. In the book Built to Last, Collins and Porras identify a number of principles that companies have that last a long time, 50, 100 years or more. And one of them is overcoming the tyranny of the or. The tyranny of the or is a false alternative. And here is a tyranny of the or. Should I go for the pain or should I go for the vision? Great companies overcome the tyranny of the or, and the resolution to the tyranny of the or is an and. So when you're in conversation and the prospect's talking to you, sure, let's find out what is the pain. But 80 to 95% of the time, they're going to tell you I'm good, or they're going to ignore you, and you need to go for the vision. It's more difficult to go for the vision. The vision creates urgency. Idea number 3, earning the PIK, creating urgency with bold vision, bold behavior. Are you getting everything you want out of your selling process? If you're not, ask yourself, were you bold enough in your vision? Were you bold enough in your behavior? Here's an example, personal example, the story of the early class. Last semester in college, class I wanted to take only offered at 7 a.m. I sleep till 10 a.m. What would you do in a situation like that? Go to sleep early, get up early, stay up all night, take the class, go to sleep. What I did, my bold vision, was to get the administration to change the time the class was offered so I could sleep late and take the class. Imagine you're getting dressed in your dorm room. It's 10:30, a reasonable hour. You have an appointment at 11 with the head of the department where you want them to change the time the class is offered. As you're getting dressed, you say to yourself, am I insane? We're supposed to do what we're told in life, and here we're challenging the system. We're bucking it. But since we made the appointment, we decide to go ahead, and the butterflies that started in our stomach, in our dorm rooms, like a tsunami, by the time we get to this huge administration building, 30 stories tall. For those of you who are Tolkien fans, think of Frodo at the gates of Mordor. So we ride the elevator up to the 30th floor. We have our hand on the professor's door. Hear the voice coming through. Maybe we choke with fear at this point. Isn't it true that there are times in our lives when we're on the precipice of doing amazing things and we choke with fear? But not this time. We push through the door, and now we're face to face with the professor, who smiles and says, what can I do for you? Doesn't know why you're there. Now, what are you going to say? Are you going to say to this professor, do you mind changing the time the class is offered so I could sleep late? That's looking at it from the seller's point of view. We need to look at it from the buyer's point of view. So if you're like me, you would say, hey, if you offer the class at 7, not going to get a lot of attendance. Attendance is so low, sometimes the university administration, they'll cut the course, they'll drop it. So you look at it from the buyer's point of view. And as you know, when you ask for the sale, you shut up. Now you watch a range of emotions play over this professor's face. First, just can't believe you're brass and coming in and changing the system. But then a subtle smile. This professor remembers what it was like to be young. Then some thoughtfulness. You know what? Big smile. Let's change the time the class is offered. True story. So there are 6 payoffs here. Most importantly, they changed the time the class was offered so I could sleep late. But then, this is gravity, if you could see what I'm doing. I'm dropping a pen. Can't change gravity, law of nature. But if there's a man-made or a woman-made rule I've known since the age of 20, I could change it. Third, my wife has told me over the last 40 years she regrets the day the administration changed the time the class was offered. She thinks I would have been easier to manage all these years if they knocked me on my butt and made me get up at 7 a.m. to take that class. And by the way, that's not true. I'm a windmill tilter. I would keep on going anyway. Fourth, who did I go to? I went to the top dog. I went to the head of the department. So here's a thought check-in for you. Are you going to the highest level you can? You'll see later in a case we're going to look at how important that could be. And then 5th and 6th, bold vision, bold behavior. Are you bold enough in your vision? Are you bold enough in your behavior? Now, how do you do this? How do you show a bold vision? By understanding that the prospect is probably on a false summit. So if you see the mountain pictured there, think of a prospect on that mountain looking down. Our job is to get them to look up to that other mountain, which represents a higher level of well-being. And that's the key to selling. It's the essence of persuasion. The prospect is looking down. We need to get them to look up to a higher level of well-being. This earns the right to access it. It makes us feel morally clean inside. Idea 4, develop and use a powerful wow toolbox. You could use the wow toolbox to get into the conversation, but also to prove your case. So when you finish with a sales call, you ought to be able to assess what are the wows you got. How do you get those wows? This is the wow toolbox from an architectural client. It's got hard-hitting messages like we have a smoke jumping team with strong visual icons. We got strong testimonials from well-known companies. We have examples of jobs we did. We took pictures. Risk mitigation strategies for the risk-averse prospect, and great diagnostic questions. So what's in your WOW toolbox? That's something you might start accumulating today if you don't have a strong WOW toolbox. Now, WOWs are two-edged swords. No WOWs, if you don't get a WOW from a sales call, probably need to amp up your sales presentation. But if we do get a WOW, right, what are the PIKs we harvested? So here's a question, a thought question. Are you requesting and getting testimonials? If not, why not? Recap on revolutionary ideas. What can pure selling do? Better qualification through PIKs. Earn the right with bold vision, bold behavior. Overcome the tyranny of the or, the false alternative. Build and use your WOW toolbox. Let's say a few words about your standard sales call. What do you have in your standard sales call? Now, your standard sales call is a process to form relationships faster. There are three parts to the standard sales call. 1 to 7 sets up the serious conversation, and we're going to look at this in greater detail in a moment. 8 to 12 is your fact finding, and 13 to 18 is how you prove your case and close the sale. Let's drill in a little bit more on steps 1 to 7. Research. How much research do you do before an important sales call? We usually spend 20 to 30 minutes researching our prospect. And in about a minute or so, I'm going to show you a couple of neat research techniques. What are the freebies that you bring? Very often from your research, valuable information that are not self-serving. They don't have to use the freebie. They don't have to buy from you to use the freebie. But it sets up the hot button issue to nail an urgency, the bold vision. And then how do you prove? What are the testimonials and other proving tools that you use? What's your economic justification? If you're not the low-priced provider, how can you show the prospect that they earn more money by paying you more? And then great diagnostic questions. And there are 3 types we recommend. First, tell me about you, your company, and your culture. Second, tell me about your need. And third, tell me about my competition. You know, once we were doing a diagnosis, a salesperson had a challenge. The prospect had gone radio silent. And when we finished going through this, you know, you know what his comment was? He said, his name was Sam. He said, gee, I skipped all the steps in the standard sales call. Let's take a moment and look at some neat research techniques. If you have a large prospect, one who's publicly traded, you get a market line report that has a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Now, this comes from a company called MarketLine, lower right-hand corner of your screen. You would go to MarketLine, you pay $175 at least for this report. But if you go to your library, you can get it for free. Library research, great idea. Here's another idea. For small and medium-sized businesses, America's News also available in your library. Here's a client of mine, Paret Samjan, and here's an article in the local newspaper, the Star Ledger. They would awarded a job. So you could get this kind of information for free through library searches. So what can pure selling do? Better qualify through earn PIKs, earn your PIKs with bold vision, bold behavior, overcome the tyranny of the or, build and use strong WOW toolbox, powerful standard sales call. Let's talk about this acting boldly. You know, bold vision, bold behavior. People don't act boldly all the time. Why don't we? Many salespeople won't challenge the prospect's thinking. If you don't challenge the thinking with a bold vision, you're not going to bring them to that higher mountain. So why don't we act boldly? Sometimes we're stuck in social selling versus business selling. A social seller wants to make friends, wants to have social relationships. A business seller wants to earn the right to profitable business. Now, is it one or the other? No. That would be a tyranny of the or. You need an and here. But unfortunately, some sellers are so focused on social selling that they never really get around to business selling and they don't close sales. So here's something to think about. If you could bring your prospect to a higher mountain of well-being, are you helping the prospect if you don't challenge them, if you don't show them and be persistent? So again, we're focused on what can pure selling do. Better qualification through PIKs, earn your PIKs through bold vision, bold behavior, overcome the tyranny of the or, build and use a wow toolbox, powerful standard sales call, understand why we need to act boldly, and the final idea is pick a couple of challenge customers. A challenge customer is somebody you don't think you're going to close. And when you go after that client or that prospect, that challenge prospect, you're going to develop new ideas which will help you close the rest of your customers. So you got a challenging prospect. Should we give up? Very often I hear salespeople say, should I give up? Or should we use it as a brainstorming technique? Here's a case history. Major prospects for my client were buying very little or nothing. Should we give up, move on, or should we take on a challenge here? What can pure selling do? Now, to be an effective salesperson, we really need to be level 5 leaders. This is described in Collins' book, Good to Great. And he talks about this metaphor of using the window and the mirror properly. So when things go well with success, we look outside the window and we give credit to the team. But when things don't go well, we hold a mirror up to our face and ask ourselves, what could we have done differently? So what we want to overcome is learned helplessness by earning the right. And a dysfunctional way to use the window and the mirror is when things go well, you look in the mirror, you pat yourself in the back, and when things don't go well, you look outside the window and you say, oh, it's somebody else's fault. You know, the price is too high. We don't have the inventory. We don't respond enough. So it's taking ownership. So here's how we took ownership. We're looking for positive access with these major accounts. They're whales in selling positive access at a high level, coin of the realm. How we proceeded. Each week in a 30-minute one-to-one session, we discussed the challenge accounts. Each salesperson had 2. If the previous week's tactics didn't succeed, we conceived and implemented a new tactic. 16 weeks in a row. Wow, that was challenging. Here's some of the things that we did. We did extensive research, including if they had product on the shelf at retail, we took pictures of them. We went higher in the food chain to higher level decision makers. We went out of the food chain to higher level decision makers, and we created unique messaging with animations. The outcome, we developed techniques which we use with less challenging customers, and we improve results. So the sales process is going nowhere. One of the things we did is if we tried 3 times with a prospect, with a decision maker, and he or she was not willing to move it forward, we went higher in the food chain. And why do we do that? Very often a buyer is really suiting his or her convenience on the one hand, or they can't take the risk, like they're graded on how they do in a month or a quarter. And so they're not aligned with what leadership wants. And so we need to start at the top. Go to the CEO, go to top management. And top management could spread the risk of a new vendor over more quarters. So in this project, as an example, we were getting nowhere with a buyer. We went to one of the owners of a NASDAQ, a publicly traded company. We got a response, we had a meeting, and now we're getting more business. And we did messaging. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is animated messaging, which we embedded inside emails. So there are 3 parts to a litmus test for a good vendor. And again, I could send you a copy of this. If you write to me after we're done, I'll send you a copy of this. But we can manage risk, good quality, good consistency, and on-time delivery. Here's another message that we sent on picking a trusted advisor. Important qualities in a vendor, trusted advisor. So what are some of these qualities that distinguish us? We're an idea person, we're a consultant, we get things done, we're bold, and we have integrity, and our logo's at the bottom. So if you want to see a sample of this, send me an email when we're done. I'll show you what this looks like. At one of the key accounts, we sent retail shelf pictures to the VP of sales. Right? This engaged him in a conversation. He was willing to talk to us because we did something. So this is going out of the food chain and up the food chain. He referred us to a higher level decision maker we didn't know about. Within 3 weeks, we were invited to fly to a meeting in Florida. The result, new relationships, new business by changing the rules. Overall, we went after 10 or 11 accounts. We had 90% breakthrough at key accounts. And now the sales team is using the same techniques with regular accounts and getting better results. So what's our recap here? What can pure selling accomplish? Better qualification through earned PIKs, earn those PIKs with bold vision, bold behavior, overcome the tyranny of the or, the false alternative, build and use a powerful wow toolbox, develop a powerful standard sales call, act boldly, understand why you don't, and have the challenge customer as a brainstorming technique using the idea of the window in the mirror. Well, we're almost at the end of today's webinar. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. So think for a moment, what takeaways, if any, do you have from today's webinar? And just a word on next month, our next webinar is the most important sale, 8:15 to 10:30. You know, there are 3 sales: the salesperson sale, the offer sale, and the company sale. The salesperson sale is the most important sale. If the salesperson doesn't close the first sale, we don't get the next 2. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week and next month. And if you have any questions or comments, write to me at andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. Bye now.